Okay, we're going to cover some ground here. This is the how to set up the router to make a cut on that wall. In your kit, you're going to get a piece, this triangular shaped piece, and these four wheels. I've started including the bolts with the kit because you'd have to run around and find the right ones. But when you put this together, you can glue this spacer on the center here right to the wood, because this one is not supposed to turn, and this is the main one that keeps the distance. So it'd be nice to have this one nice and rigid, but it's not necessary. This one is not. This one is got a loose spacer. But I do have a washer in between the spacer and the rotating wheel. Same here on the other side. Rotating wheel, spacer. And the spacer is to reach out to the outside arch layer, because there are notches in the first one, and it'll go bump, bump, bump. And we got to reach out and get that second arch layer with the spacers. The kit, as you receive it, will have a 3.5-inch square in here to mount the router. And so whatever router you've got to center it up on that 3.5-inch recess. If you don't have one of these little trim routers, there's an adapter also in the kit that may or may not help you. So there's our tool. Before I show you the adapter, I'll show you, you now have to set your tool to be 1/4 inch deep. Now, the plywood typically is 210 thick, not 250, which is a nominal 1/4 inch. So if you set this up to 1/4 inch, it should be plenty deep. There I am, just a little light. I'm going to add a little depth to it until I get that tool coming out 1/4 inch. That tool is now set to make the cut. Now, if you got a more of a kludge of a higher power router like this one, this part comes with it. And what you do is you mount this however you can, and I can't predict how your mounting is going to work, so I include this to make it easier, at least I hope. But you need to use some screws that are already in your router to attach to this adapter, and make sure you get it centered in that hole. Now what this hole is to clear that bolt. So when you're done, I'll show you real quick here. When you get your router mounted to this thing, here's your 3.5-inch square. Which then mounts on there flush. And you can screw this to the main tool, and then you can get the router bit where it should be. But you don't need this adapter if you have a trim router that fits this 3.5. Lost my washer. Okay, we're ready to go cut. As you can see, this is going to cut into the arch a little bit. Believe it or not, you actually want it to give you a little bit more clearance for the ceiling when it goes in. whole object here is to end up with a cut that's exactly 1 3/4 inch from the outside. And what that does is here, where the beams go, it leaves you a 1/4 inch. And that's where your ceiling goes. So if this is a beam, the ceiling, it's a different material, but just to demonstrate here, the ceiling goes right there. And the ceiling will be trapped very tightly, very well, I should say, not really tightly, but well with these cross beams and the correct size cut for the ceiling itself so it fits in that groove. Forgot to tell you something about these various holes on this tool in the last video, but the holes are for the different radiuses. What happens here is this is set up to be perpendicular to a curve, and it depends on the radius of the curve where this idler pulley should be at. So it doesn't make that. This is an engineer being an engineer. I apologize, but there are 4 different holes here, and what they are for the different radiuses that you have to cut using this tool. Now the first one that's open right now is for a straight cut, and the first one, it's at the same position as the guidance pulley. This is, I call the idler. This is the one that's really setting the distance, but you want to keep it perpendicular to the curve, center line. So if you're cutting something straight, and there's a little straight cut you have to make on the project, you would use the end. On the large curve, on the back end of the arches, you use the second curve. On the sharper curves of the forward side of the arches, use the third hole. And around the end, where there's the end of the arches, there's like a 12-inch radius. That's pretty sharp. And that one is probably the only one that matters so much. But you want to relocate the idler pulley to this hole when you're doing the cut around the very tail end of the arches. There you go.